All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep, really deep, into the cold, dark waters of Loch Ness to take apart one of the most persistent mysteries of all time.
So let's start with this. This is the surgeon's photograph. And for 60 years, that's a long time. This grainy, black and white image was the definitive proof for millions that something ancient, something impossible, was lurking just beneath the surface. This is the photo that really launched a global obsession.
But what are we really looking at here? Is the Loch Ness Monster a genuine prehistoric survivor? Or is it a masterclass in myth-making, fueled by wishful thinking and a few pretty clever tricks? To really get to the bottom of it, we've got to go back to the very beginning.
So where did this all come from? Well, the idea of some kind of beast in the loch is actually surprisingly old, like centuries old. But the monster we all picture today, the long-necked, dinosaur-looking creature, that's a much more modern invention, born in the sudden flash of media frenzy.
The story technically starts way back in the 6th century, with St. Columba supposedly facing down a water beast. But let's be real, the story we all know, that kicks off in 1933. See, they built a new road along the loch, and suddenly way more people could see it. And boom, the sightings just explode. First, Aldi Mackay sees a whale-like creature. Then George Spicer has his famous run-in with a long-necked animal crossing the road. The media just ate it up, and just like that, Nessie becomes a global sensation.
So once the stories started flying, the hunt was on. But it pretty quickly moved past just, I saw something weird. To be taken seriously, believers knew they needed something more, something solid.
Right, the thinking was pretty clear. If you want anyone in the scientific world to take this seriously, forget the stories. The case for Nessie had to be built on cold, hard, objective evidence that you just couldn't brush aside.
And this is one of the big ones. In 1960, an aeronautical engineer named Tim Dinsdale filmed this dark hump moving across the loch. Now look closely at the wake it leaves. It's powerful, right? But there's no propeller wash, not like you see from the control boat. Believe it or not, the UK's own Joint Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Center analyzed it, and their official conclusion was that the object was probably animate and zipping along at up to 10 miles per hour.
Okay, so fast forward to the 70s, and the hunt goes totally high-tech. I'm talking sonar, underwater cameras, the whole shebang. Researchers started getting these tantalizing pings from the deep, picking up large moving objects that just weren't acting like a normal school of fish.
And then, in 1972, they thought they'd hit the jackpot. At the exact same moment their sonar lit up with a big target, their underwater camera snapped this. What does it look like to you? To them, it looked like a massive, diamond-shaped flipper, something like 6 to 8 feet long. This was so huge, so convincing, they actually gave the creature an official scientific name, Nessiteris rhombopteryx, which basically means the Ness wonder with the diamond fin.
But here's the thing, right? For every piece of evidence that seems like a slam dunk, the scientific community has a pretty powerful comeback. So the big question is, does any of this stuff really hold up under scrutiny? Let's go back to that first famous photo, the one that started it all. Well, it turns out it was a complete and total fake. Yeah, a deathbed confession in the 1990s revealed the whole story. It was just a toy submarine with a little sculpted head stuck on it, all cooked up to get revenge on a newspaper. Okay, so what about the big theory, the one we all think of, right? That Nessie is a living dinosaur, a plesiosaur trapped in the loch. Well, science has a few, let's say, major issues with that idea. First off, the loch itself is geologically young, only about 10,000 years old. And on top of that, it's freezing cold, and there just isn't enough fish to support a whole breeding population of giant reptiles.
So, okay, if it's not a dinosaur, what are we even looking at? Well, skeptics have a whole list of ideas. A big one is giant eels. And there's actually some DNA evidence from 2018 that found tons of eel DNA in the water. Then you've got your usual suspects, misidentified otters, swimming deer, floating logs, even weird waves. And then there's maybe the biggest explanation of all, our own psychology, the idea that we sometimes see what we want to see.
So, while the debate over a real biological monster rages on, there's one version of Nessie that is, without a doubt, 100% real.
And what is that version? It's the economic one. Check out this number. Whether there's a real monster down there or not, the idea of Nessie's powerful enough to pump an estimated £41 million into the Scottish economy every single year.
And this creates this hilarious contradiction, which this one visitor summed up perfectly. They said that after you take the local tour, where they carefully explain why the plesiosaur theory is impossible, you walk straight into a gift shop that is just packed to the rafters with plesiosaur toys. The myth, it seems, is just too good for business to ever let go of.
Which really brings us to the biggest question of all, doesn't it? After all the fakes, all the scientific debunkings, all the dead ends, why are we still so fascinated by this? Why do we keep looking?
Well, maybe it's because just when you think the case is closed, something new pulls you right back in. You know, for every old, debunked piece of evidence like the surgeon's photo, something new and intriguing pops up, like this really recent unidentified sonar contact from just this year. This story is always changing, always leaving that little bit of room for what if.
But you know, maybe the real reason is a lot more personal than that. For so many people, Nessie is what some have called a gateway cryptid. She's that first big mystery you encounter as a kid, the first time you think, wow, maybe the world isn't exactly what they tell us it is. She is the ultimate symbol of the unknown.
And I guess that leaves us here, with this one final question to chew on. Is this whole centuries-long hunt for the Loch Ness Monster really about finding an animal, or is it more about us? About our need to keep some mystery alive in a world that can feel all too explained? Maybe, just maybe, the real mystery isn't what's in the water, but why we so desperately want something to be there.